hello, and welcome to Gondor Calls for Ale, a Middle-earth strategy battle games podcast. I am, of course, your host, Sam Gallagher, and once again, I'm all alone. That's right, we'll have another Rambly Sam episode. So, before we get into that, I will still stick with the best part of every Gondor Calls for Ale episode, the part that we know you enjoy the most. Well, we don't, I assume. I'm sure I could probably look that up. But that is, of course, the ale. So, what am I drinking this fine evening? I am having a Lonely Mountain Lager. This is a rich and gold-toned brew, perfect for drinking alone, surrounded by unimaginable wealth and absolutely zero co-hosts. That's right, sort of nailed that, wrote it down, read it poorly. But what can you do? What can you do? Okay, so what you can do is move hastily on with the episode and just forget about that part. So what is this episode? So and why am I all alone, all by myself? So in this episode is going to be sort of three things, I think. Yeah, three things. So we're gonna talk about the state of the game. And we've put out we put out requests for listener questions both in our Discord. That's right, we have a Discord server, and if you too would like to join that, you can find a link to join in the description of wherever you're listening or viewing this episode. Highly recommend it. It's a good time, good group of people, and occasionally you get asked if you have any questions you want Ben and I to answer, or in this case, just me to answer. And an opportunity to show off your exciting hobby projects or lists that you want to show off. We put a call out most times before we do an episode and then air them on the great World Wide Web. So we're going to talk through some listener questions, and I guess Discord discussion questions. And then lastly, because when I recorded this, I delayed it sort of not quite as long as possible, but I delayed it, and it worked out because we got news about the books releasing, and then an article talking a little bit about some of what's in those books. So that's kind of exciting. So we'll probably touch on that. I think the listener questions, or the questions, are going to be the most exciting thing. So I'm going to start with the other stuff, get through that, move on into the questions. The questions that do in fact need answering. So, first, before we get into that, I'm going to talk about why I'm all alone. Ben is once again trekking through the wilds on a backpacking trip and hike. This time, however, it wasn't super extended. It was just a week, but this time it's all my fault. I forgot the required dongles. Yes, that is an official word. The required connectors to plug in my microphone and my camera when I went away, and we were going to record when I was away. And then that timing didn't line up with Ben. So rather than delay an episode, we thought that since I like the sound of my own voice, I could probably get away with doing an episode solo. I have a good time doing them. Never quite as much fun as with Ben. But kind of a good time to do it. Plenty to talk about, and kind of apt to talk about where the game is currently, because we're getting new stuff in a couple short weeks. So that's it. So basically, I just wanted to say that like this is my fault, not Ben's fault. But you'll get punished by having to have a Sam exclusive episode. Okie dokie. So there we have it. That's what we're doing. And yeah, I think we can roll on into the main meat and potatoes of the episode. But before we do, there we go, the perfect segue, talking about rolling. If you would like to roll some beautifully hand-swirled resin dice with exactly 0 micro bubbles that are guaranteed by Gondor Calls for Ale to roll sixes at least some of the time, you can look no further than the official sponsor of Gondor Calls for Ale, the Baron of Dice. He has a huge range of dice for all different games, but a specifically Lord of the Rings themed several sets for both good and evil. So if you'd like to get some awesome dice, help us out, help him out, definitely check out the link in the description of wherever you're watching or viewing this episode. And also in the description there is a promo code that will get you a bit of a discount on it. So that promo code is capital G, capital C, capital A. Check out the Baron of Dice for some awesome dice. Okay, now we can move on. The state of the game. An interesting one, and not something I'm going to dwell on overly long, I don't think. When Ben and I were kind of coming up with the topic of what I could waffle on about, I had semi-suggested the state of the game to be something we talked about, sort of like a 6 months later, because it's not quite been 6 months, but it's been close. And I was saying, not overly keen on doing that, because I think, unfortunately, I think it would be hard to not have more complaints than positives, and that's just generally not my favorite thing, and I don't really want to dwell on it, and and I think it's sort of the stuff that everyone's been saying, basically, right? But good news, after we sort of chatted about that has changed a little bit, because we now have a release date on these new books. Because that's essentially it, right? Is it feels like there was this like mass release, big hype, a lot of stuff poured in, a lot of people were nervous, excited, a lot of people were upset because some of their stuff was going to Legacy or it wasn't going to be available in the first two books. But it was exciting, and it was like, okay, well, we're going to have just these two. We're going to have the rules, the armies of the Hobbit, and the armies of the Lord of the Rings, and the War of the Rohirrim for a little while. And then we're going to, shortly thereafter, we're going to get another book that's going to allow us to play everything in those legacy PDFs. And then shortly thereafter, which I swear initially it was like first quarter of the new year, it just sort of like extended. And I think basically there's been a lot of people in a bit of a holding pattern, waiting for either their armies or finding it tedious to have to play just the 6 scenarios that are currently available. And I certainly felt that to some extent. I think the playing only having the 6 scenarios definitely wasn't the most fun. What I don't understand is why people just didn't use the old match play guide, because you have 18 perfectly good scenarios, and like I know there's an event coming up that they edited some of the old scenarios to make them score for 20 points. I don't understand. You just don't use the new ones and just use the old ones for the whole event. Anyway, doesn't super matter, but I think a lot of people were not overly keen on having a limited pool of scenarios, especially when so many of them were related to, or when a number of them had the ban of EPs, and the ban of EPs are a big swing, and now the army building restricts what armies can have banners more than previously. So, that didn't feel great. And then the other thing, right, is that that it sort of like very, very quickly got a little bit solved. It felt like the meta, like, Eagles winning everything are very good, both at seemingly at high and low points. And then Dale being with 1,000,000 bows and a bunch of wind lances also being very good. And, I think people just sort of like lost a little interest. I certainly haven't been overly inspired to play Lord of the Rings recently. I still thoroughly enjoyed the game. I had a great time taking Berda to an event. I enjoyed my Defenders of the Hornburg, but just I'm struggling with the percentage of throwing spears for Rohan, and there was just enough little stuff that I wasn't super jazzed on it. And I think the book that's coming out, The Armies of Middle-earth, is going to have a bunch more of the armies that I'm excited to see what's been changed and improved on. And it was really exciting to see to initially see all that stuff, but then there was also some disappointments for me personally when that stuff came out. For outrageously or foolishly, perhaps, I was crossing my fingers for Fight 5 Uruk-hai across the board, but instead they got Shield Wall, which is just objectively bad on them, because they're also an army that takes pikes, and you can't take shield and pike, and so basically, and crossbow, so only a third of your Uruk-hai potentially have shield. So it's just a weird thing, and felt like a bit of a miss. And then Gothmog got way worse, and that was an army I really enjoyed playing. All the monsters got super cool for sure. But I played one game with the three trolls, which I was super excited to use, and then they just sort of it ended up not feeling overly fun and all of this stuff. And honestly, kind of the I haven't been overly thrilled with the community response. There's a lot of negativity, which is exactly what I'm doing and why I didn't want to do State of the Game overly much. But there's been a lot of negativity because we're like waiting on the book, all this stuff, and I get it. I just complained about that, right? Like, it's a bummer. But then there's also like, well, this army's really good, but like I'm still gonna play it, and you're just like, that's like not so fun, and there are a lot more all hero or mostly hero armies kicking around, which is, and same with all monsters, is they've never been the most fun to play against, because it's like, look, we played for 2 hours, you killed a bunch of my models, and I maybe killed a couple of yours, but previously it was like, hey, look, but I still won because you're playing a very low model count army or an all monster army, and now it's like, oh, we played for 2 hours, I killed one of your models, you took off fistfuls of mine, and you still won. Like, that's doesn't feel good. So to sort of wrap it all up, how, what, why, when, who, why, what, dip, dodge, dive, and duck do I feel Lord of the Rings is doing currently? I still think it's in a more fun, better spot than it was previously. I think the community played themselves into a corner where they couldn't have lots of army list building options because nobody was doing it as it was intended or should have been done. I still think the army lists are really cool. I love that you can, like, you read through some of the previews of the characters they've shown, and you're just like, oh, well, like, they throw an example, and we'll talk about this later, but they showed off Imrahil, and he doesn't seem that good anymore. But then you're like, yeah, but whatever the Dol Amroth army is going to be, there's going to be like a million other special rules in there, so that there's more special rules tied to the army rather than to the specific characters and stuff. I still really enjoy that. So I think it's in a good spot. I think it's going to be in a really good spot once these other two books come out. My concern is that the momentum has gone a little bit. The wind has been taken out of the sails by an unfortunate delay, and I think the only reason the thing that has to have happened is there has to have been printing issues with the book. That's the only thing Games Workshop don't produce in-house, right? So whether it was a shipping issue or a printing issue, that then they were like, nope, you have to reprint all of these. So like, whatever it is, like that's the only explanation that I can realistically have why they wouldn't release it, or why it's taken so long to release. So, but call me a GW fanboy or not wanting to blame them or like whatever it is. It is what it is. I would have liked to have the book earlier, but I'm just going to be super excited about it now. And the nice thing is, because it's been delayed, or maybe this was always the intention, but it's going to be a big old release, and there's a bunch of extra models coming out as well at the same time. So it's going to be an expensive day, but a very exciting day. Hoo-wee! There we have it. So, State of the Game, decent spot. Definitely looking for something else to shake it up, whether that's new armies, FAQ, new scenarios, whatever. And I think that's coming, so I think that's really good. It's been in a little bit of a like medium place, and I think so. I think we're gearing up for some really good stuff on the horizon. Yeah. Okay, we're gonna put that down. And I'm just looking at my phone, which is why I'm looking down. We're gonna talk about the armies of Middle-earth, designer notes discussing the new profiles. I'm not going to read through the whole article. It's on the Warhammer community. You definitely, if you haven't read it, you can go read it. I think I only skimmed it and just like looked at the new profiles. But for an example, they showed off Imrahil, and he's got a sweet new model. And he looks pretty decent. Not overly familiar with him from the previous edition, so hard to do a complete compare contrast, but he's 160 points. He's Fight 7, which is it's certainly an increase. Shoot 4+, doesn't matter. Strength 4, Defense 7, 3 attacks, 3 wounds. Courage 4+, Intelligence 3+, a brainiac, if ever I've heard one. 3 Might, 3 Will, 3 Fate. Man, he's got a faction, Dol Amroth, Gondor, or it's Gondor, Dol Amroth. Hero Infantry Unique. He's on a 25mm base. His war gear is heavy armor, shield, and hand weapon. His heroic actions are heroic defense, resolve, strength, and strike. So he's got strike, so he can go up to 10, which is pretty nice. Defense is always great to have. Resolve, no challenge. That's interesting. I kind of would have expected him to have challenge, and challenge is actually pretty good now, so that's cool. His options for 30 points. He's got an armored horse and a lance. Actually, I whistle at that. I was reading that before doing this. I actually think that's really reasonable, because every horse is 20 points. This is an armored horse, which is better than the standard horse. So maybe what armored horses are 25 points, and that puts his lance at a 5-point upgrade, which is like totally reasonable. I can't remember what the Kings of Men are, and I'm not going to bother taking the time to look it up. But I thought they paid at least 10 points for the lance, and maybe armored horses are the same as regular horses. I don't know, but so he's 190 points on horse with lance. He's got 2 special rules. He's got the lineage of Numenor. The range of Imrahil's stand fast is 12 rather than 6. Definitely a solid rule. Less so in good, because they all have high courage anyway. And then Dol Amroth for Gondor. Other friendly Dol Amroth models treat Prince Imrahil as a banner with a range of 6 inches. Definitely good. Obviously, previously with the army bonus, it went up to 12. I think people are, I've seen some comments of people being like, man, it's only a 6-inch banner now. That's still really good. I hope it doesn't go up to 12, but it's definitely possible that in whatever army he's leading, it does go up to 12. They're still going to have an option for a banner on foot, or like another banner, because I was like, well, this might be the only banner you really have in the army, but the Plastic Knights and Forge World Foot Knights both have banner options, so you will get a banner. But yeah, Imrahil seems pretty good. I'm excited to see what their army bonuses are. I really hope it's not just like within range of this hero you get this thing and we increase it. I hope they do something slightly more exciting than that. And then we get something way more exciting. We get a Khazad Guard here. 12 points. We've got Move 5, standard for a dwarf. We've got Fight 5. That's awesome. Shoot 4+. Strength 4, also, I guess that's the same as it was. Defense 7, great. 1 attack, 1 wound. Courage 6+. Intelligence 6+. We've got Dwarf, and then faction is Khazad Doom, Warrior Infantry Elite. Okay, cool. You're not going to have a whole army of them, which is good. And then we've got War Gear, Heavy Dwarven Armor, 2-handed weapon, and hand weapon, and special rules of Bodyguard. Super good. So much cooler than it was. It'll be interesting to see if there is like a Hearthguard upgrade. Make them burly. In some ways, I kind of hope not. It's definitely less punishing this edition to not have the burly, because you get that natural 6, you get it back. That's super cool. Fight 5 is awesome. I'm really, really excited about dwarves. I think the 2 armies I'm most excited about, with the exception of I still don't know what this Dragons of the North army is going to be. It's probably dwarves and corsairs. So I have a little heavy box of metal dwarves that's got like 1 million Khazad Guard and a bunch of Iron Guard and stuff, so I'm actually very excited to maybe do something with that army. Then we mentioned Tom Bombadil and Goldberry, talk about how they're not going to have control zones, which sounds interesting. They can both spend their will points to sing various songs, each inspired by those they sing in the novel, which is pretty cool. So Tom's definitely going to get one to make people ignore difficult terrain and move faster, right? Hop along my hearties, hop. It's ponies all we are fond of parties. Anyway, that's going to be great. Each song has its own unique effect. Models pass courage tests, increase their movement value. There you go. Regain lost wounds, improve their fight value in a turn in which they charge, and more. Tom and Goldberry each have distinct songs that only they can sing, meaning there is a real reason to include both in your army list. That's super cool. What army lists are they going to go into? That's that's the thing that's weird about it. Maybe do they get added to the Fellowship? Is there just gonna be because there's not? Surely there is a Fellowship army, but I don't know. Maybe they're gonna have a weird thing where it's they can be included in the blah 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 lists, and you lose all the other bonuses. But I can't imagine that. And I think it's a shame because I think they're probably going to be way more reasonable now than they ever have been. I like singing at people. I think that's hilarious. I like Tom Bombadil is the greatest character. Um, so but I have a feeling they're not going to be in an army list that I'm going to want to play. But I'm excited to see what that is. Now we move into some of the evil models. We're going to talk about dragons. Here we go. Dragons have dropped to 200 points. That's pretty good. They're on a 130 millimeter round base. Pretty cool. Round base is cooler than ovals. I think, is that the huge one? Is that the same as the catapult troll? If so, massive base. Love it. Inherently smart creatures have an intelligence value of 5+, while they also have a bump in fight value to 8. Super cool. So they're fight 8. As for their special rules, they gain dominant 5 and large target. Pretty good. One of the biggest changes comes with how you upgrade them. Breathe Fire no longer requires will to use. I really hope that's changed from what it does, because if so, that is such a 2+ to hit that was a strength 10 and and did splash damage and just instantly removed you. It was not fun. Unless it's wildly expensive, if each of the upgrades are 100 points and that's one of them, then it's more reasonable, but it's still not overly fun. Worm Magic now grants foil magic in addition to previous effects, so Transfix and Compel I think were its other two. It did, and you got a 3 point of will to cast spells. Their entirely new option, Superior Intelligence, which allows the dragon to automatically pass courage tests. Doesn't seem great unless there's a bunch more stuff that makes courage important, or not courage, sorry, the intelligence test. If I said courage, I'm wrong. If it's intelligence test, well, I don't know, that definitely seems like the weakest. Oh no, there's a second part to this as well, which is why you take it. On the 4+, additionally, anytime you spend a point of might on the 4+, it's free. Yeah, you're taking that for that, and then courage test or intelligence test, you're like, meh, sure, whatever. Yeah, seems cool. I'm excited to see what they do. I like the idea of running a Moria army led by a dragon. I always thought that was pretty cool. Definitely more interesting potentially than the Balrog, and maybe more fun. So yeah, we'll see. Going through these now, we've got the Black Dragon Warrior. This is a pretty cool change, I think, here. 10 points. Move 6, fight 4, shoot 4+, 3, strength 3, defense 6, 1 attack, 1 wound, courage 6+, intelligence 6+, man, Eastling Black Dragon, warrior infantry 25mm base, heavy armor, shield, and hand weapons. Black dragons may have one of the following options: exchange shield for banner for 25 points, and an Eastling halberd for 1 point. Then we've got the Phalanx special rule. A model with this special rule may use a pike and shield without penalty. Additionally, should a warrior model with this special rule lose a combat, up to 2 friendly models can make way instead of 1. So your classic shield wall. And then Warriors of the Dragon Cult. This I think is cool. This model may only be included in the warband of a Black Dragon hero. Additionally, while within 3 inches of Black Dragon hero, this gains +1 bonus to their fight value. That's super cool. So I'm assuming that's going to be the Dragon Emperor and Dragon Knights. Maybe there'll be some other ones. But I really like that it's not just this massive 12-inch bubble of +1 fight, and my Black Dragons are all now fight 5. You you have to fight in clumps, which maybe doesn't realistically change your list design that much. You can still probably take a couple of Dragon Knights and the Dragon Emperor, and it's still going to be really solid and gross. But I like that change. I like all the changes I've seen so far. It seems pretty cool. Seems like pretty cool stuff, and it's going to be a sweet release, and I am very excited. Will it wildly change stuff? I don't know. I don't know that I think the armies of Middle-earth is going to change that much stuff. I think it is, of course, potential that there'll be a release of an army that's just going to break everything, and it's going to be absolutely amazing. Hopefully not. I think what's more likely to change is the match play guide, which the match play guide is going to have an additional 6 missions, so we're going to go up to 24 scenarios, and I guess a retool on all the previous 18 we've had, or I guess 12. There'll be 12 retuned ones, because I assume the 6 we've had in the main rulebook are just going to be immediately moved over into the match play guide. And then 6 brand new ones, which are going to be super cool. I'm guessing there's going to be something about picking up multiple objects. Hope so, because then like Shagrat's going to be actually cool. But yeah. So I'm excited. I think it's cool. It's nice that they're releasing more stuff, and now I just have to avoid spoilers for 2 weeks because I really want to crack open this book without. Well, I guess it's 2 and a bit weeks. I guess 15 days when this episode is out. But I really want to crack open this book without basically knowing what is already in it. Okay. Now I need to find my questions. Here we go. Okay, so moving hastily on into some questions that do in fact need answering. I'm not going to say who said them, partially because it's a combination of Discord names and Instagram names, and it doesn't mean anything to me as to who you are. So, for the 2 people I do know, Anyway, I'm just gonna read them. I'm gonna give you my thoughts. I'll answer for Ben if it's a Ben related question, and if he ever listens to this, can then show me that he has by disputing them on a upcoming podcast. So, our first question, which these are coming from Instagram responses. Which thematic list would you write for each other, which the other one would hate? So here we go. First one I can answer for Ben. What would I write? What's a thematic list that I would write that Ben would hate? I guess it's sort of there's potentially 2 parts to this. Would Ben hate it because he hates the theme, or would he hate it because he hates playing it? I think we're going to go with because he hates playing it, because I don't think that there's much of a theme that I think Ben wouldn't enjoy. Hates playing it. Thematic. I think he would hate playing Corsairs. I think I think he's played them a couple times and really, really didn't enjoy it. So that would sort of be an easy one. Not overly themed. I guess you just go for the Corsairs that are currently available, like out of the book. So, out of the Armies of Middle Earth book. But that's so just captains, bosuns, regular Corsairs, and ballistas. What else would Ben not enjoy? I think the thing is he would find a way to enjoy most stuff. I know he doesn't overly like shooting, so I think like I think probably a Rangers of Mirkwood list. That would probably do it, because it's just 100% bows. I don't think he cares one way or the other about Tauriel, but like Legolas is definitely overpowered, and I think he would feel somewhat bad about playing it. He certainly wouldn't enjoy playing the army the way you need to play it to win. So we'll go with for both the theme he might not particularly like and for the playing experience. We'll go with Rangers of Mirkwood for that one. For me, what could he write that I wouldn't enjoy? I mean, that's a safe bet. Honestly, it's going to come down more to the models. Like if he, I think Rivendell would be super cool, but if he made me play with a bunch of those mono-posed high elves, I'd be very sad. Iron Hills with Dane. I like Iron Hills and I like Dane, but movie Dane just like absolutely ruined that character for me. So that would be a solid one. That would be interesting to get his response to that. And then we're moving into the next question. Who is the worst opponent you've had? Name names. Ooh, wow. Ben Gallagher. No, just kidding. Ben's great. Though I safe bet that I could certainly be on the list of worst opponents he's had, because I'm the worst version of myself whenever we play a game. I don't I think that's a funny question, just in the sense I'm not going to name names. We'll discuss why later. No, um, I guess I guess it's like anyone who just doesn't make it a fun game. I think that's going to be my cop out answer to that. And there are certainly people who I really enjoy, but usually the games are like I never want to play them because I know I'm going to lose. Uh, and then I get into that mindset and do lose. So yeah, I'm not really going to answer that question. Unfortunately, I think that is the slight disadvantage of being a content creator, and I just don't want to call anyone out, especially because I have very strong opinions about what makes something fun or not, and that is not necessarily, as we discussed, in what's a competitive thing or not. It doesn't necessarily line up with everyone else, so I don't want to be like, oh man, I absolutely hated playing Jim Bob because he did X, Y, and Z or whatever, and I'm like, and that's just really messed up, and it's like, well, that's how I have fun. So there's that. I guess the one of the ones that like springs to mind is I legitimately don't know his name. It was one of the first Lord of the Rings events I went to when I got back into the game. With my friend Brian, we went up to an event in Philly in like a mall. It was like at some like weird con in an old like food court or something. It was one of the like unexpected tournaments, and I don't know what the dude's name was, but like it just rubbed me the wrong way. Like I was playing Survivors of Lake Town at the time and pulled all of my models out and like put them all on the table, and he was playing Sauron and orcs, and he like sat there and watched me take all my models out and put them on the table, and then was like, "Let's roll for deployment or whatever." Rolled, he won and he got to choose sides, and chose the side I was on. I was like, man, like really? And he was like, yeah, well, you're just mad because it's like the better side. And I'm like, no, I'm mad because you like sat there watching me pull out like 80 models. It wasn't actually 80 models, but still, it's like 40 models. Didn't say like, hey man, just so you know, I'm gonna swap sides if I can, and it's just like that kind of stuff, just like from the get go, just immediately rubbed me the wrong way. So that was a miserable game. It was also Seize the Prize, and he managed to pick it up with Sauron, so it was kind of game over from the beginning there. But I do not know what his name was, so I cannot name that name. Which of the existing armies are you most excited about getting more options with the third book? As I've said, Corsairs for sure. I'm really excited to see what that army is like. Existing armies, because Khazad-dûm doesn't exist, so can't say that one. So Corsairs for sure. Probably Gondor. I like the idea of atop the wall quite a lot, and I am excited to see, if you can take Avenger Bolt Throwers, put them back in the list. I think it's going to make it real good. And some more. I guess they're not going to have that many additional options. I guess Baragon would be cool. Hopefully he's got some cool rule with Pippin. Make you actually want to take Pippin and maybe even dismount him from Shadowfax. That would be cool. And then some of those, I'm sort of more excited about some of the armies that are going to be combinations of, like the Grief of Eomer. Don't know what that is. That sounds awesome. So like those kind of things. And then I think Mordor. I think a lot of the evil armies actually really need the boost. So putting Black Numenorians back in, I think is going to be pretty big for a lot of those evil armies. So number one choice is going to be Corsairs, because I actually potentially want to play that army, not as a shooting army. I don't want any Arbalists in there because they're terrible models, and that's no fun. I just want a bunch of pirates running around. And I think that could be a really cool looking army, so I'm excited to see what that is. Number two would probably be just evil, Mordor, whatever it is. And then number three would be Gondor, because I think it'd be cool to see what they do with some. But I'm excited about it all. Who is my favorite character in the book whose mini you dislike or is unusable? Tom Bombadil. Tom Bombadil's mini is terrible and doesn't look anything like I imagined him when I read that book. And yeah, it bums me out. So that is super easy answer. If I had to pick another one, so that's just pure dislike of the model, and mostly unusable because it's kind of hard to. Well, we don't know what army list he's going to be in. Sauron, also awesome. Not really so much a character in the book, but like definitely a model that would be really cool to use, but has a really bad model. And is unusable. I'm assuming we're like talking about like not is just like bad. If we're talking about models that are bad that I really liked in the book. I don't know. Unusable is pretty strong there. I mean, we'll see. We'll see because right now, actually, any of the Rangers of the North as well, not the characters, but like the Dunedain, they're terrible and they're so cool, you know. And I want to be able to take them not just as the Grey Company, which they might be good in. So yeah, so there you go. 3 answers for different reasons. What do I think Ben would say? I don't know. I don't know what Ben's thought on that would be. I'm gonna definitely save some of these and ask him in the next episode, get some of his responses. And here we go for the last Instagram question. Are your heroes doing the lion's share of the work, or your warriors carrying the games? Well, I could say for certainty that in the games that Ben has played recently, it's his warriors have been carrying them because he's been playing a lot of hill tribesmen, and while they die in droves, their heroes aren't that big and hitty, and therefore just having a swarm of dudes is what is both winning him the games and killing models the majority of the time. I think for me, with the armies I've been playing recently, which is Burder's Horde and the Defenders of the Hornburg, it's all about the heroes. On the games where like Helm doesn't do much or Hera has a bad game, the army falls apart. And Burder's Horde, you need Burder to be the threat and the kill. Like you've got a Hill Troll, which is definitely good for sure, but your other heroes are kind of like the lower captains. So I think that one probably is a little more even, where you're like, but it just fought one hero all game, but I was still able to win. But Defenders of the Hornburg is 100% the heroes. When I lose Helm or Hera early, it's terrible, and you like need to get between the two of them. You need to be getting like 4 to 6 kills a turn, ideally. Ideally you're sort of like, I think minimum of like 5. One of them's going into 2, and the other one's going into 1 in heroic combating, for sure. So I think it's probably mostly the heroes doing the work for me. All right, now we're gonna move into some questions from our Discord. Instagram sort of compiles them in a slightly easier way to go. I'm just going to be skimming through a Discord channel and answering as we go. So what are your favorite narrative scenarios? I honestly haven't played that many narrative scenarios. Ben and I played through a bunch of the like the Breaking the Fellowship kind of scenarios, and they just ended up being a little bit of a miss because they're so one-sided, or not one-sided, but you have big heroes and some hobbits fighting Uruk-hai, and it just the 3 hunters just like trashed 24 Uruk-hai so quickly, so it just ended up not really being a game. I like the ones that sort of like have a little bit more more warrior, just generic warriors led by a few heroes kind of thing. So like, or like huge number of warriors with some big heroes, like the Last Alliance looks hella fun and it's a really cool scene. So yeah, unfortunately, I don't really have a great answer for that. I can tell you that the sort of intro Ben and I both got to Lord of the Rings was before the game was released in a like product preview kind of thing, and we played a scenario of it was like the Fellowship. I think it was no. I guess it was the Four Hobbits and Aragorn fighting a bunch of Moria goblins because it was like part of what came in that original Fellowship of the Ring starter box versus a Fellowship, and it was at like a Games Workshop product thing, so that we sort of had this like lecture, or not lecture, but a presentation about what was happening, what was coming up, and then like there were like 4 different tables all set up differently, and like we got shipped off to one with our parents at the time, because we were like little kids, because this was shortly after the movie came out, or around the time the movie came out. Must have been shortly after, or on the same thing. I think maybe we did, because we got a screening from Games Workshop of the movie at like they had a private screening at the Arundel Mills Mall, and then I think they maybe did a presentation shortly after or sometime. Anyway, so that was super cool. All right, our next question. I'd be interested in hearing your thoughts on the general state of the competitive scene at the moment. A lot of people are understandably upset about Book 3, and I'd like to know how you stand. Yeah, I mean, basically, I said this earlier, right? Really excited for the new book. I get why people are upset. I think it's a shame that more people can't self-police and say, I see Eagles and Dale and all of this other stuff are winning. Like, let's find some of those ones that aren't doing very well, and I'm going to play that and have a good time with that, or see if I can make that competitive and win, or So I think some amount of it is the people who play competitively. Depending how or why you justify that, you might end up just playing the Eagles because it's the best. But yeah, it's stale. I think already stale within 6 months, and it's just like just not fun, because I can play like, oh man, I had a great time in doubles playing the Riders of Aemir with Ben. I would 100% play that army again, and I think it is. While I think it is quite a good army, I definitely don't think it's like game breaking. And I just know if I run into somebody rolling with like Eagles or a big Dale shooting army, or whatever other boogeyman of the scene there currently is, I'm gonna lose, and it's probably not gonna be that much fun. Like that one, you maybe get to kill an eagle or two, but like all it takes is like a couple hurls. Both your heroes are off their horses, and they're gonna. So it's just so yeah, not in a great spot, and I'm excited to see what they do, what changes up with the new book. And I think more than the third book, as I said, I think the match play guide is what's going to make that change be interesting. All right, here we go. It's been 80 episodes now with half pints along the way. How has podcasting with your brother and guests influence your own involvement in the hobby? That is a great question. It certainly keeps me more in the specifically Lord of the Rings area of the hobby than if I wasn't doing it. There are plenty of times where I'm like, oh, I don't feel like going to that event, but I make myself go because we need the episode, or I know it's going to be interesting to talk about it afterwards. It's been an amazing way to connect with Ben, and sort of basically guarantee that we have a couple hour hangout every couple weeks. The negative side of it is when I'm excited about another game. It often feels like I don't get the time to do the hobby I'm excited about, because it's like, oh, I've got this Lord of the Rings project to do, or got this editing thing to do, and so it has turned the hobby a little bit into a little more into work than perhaps it otherwise would. So yeah, hopefully that answers that question. How does that experience contrast feel as a player and hobbyist today? Um, yeah, I mean, I think, uh, yeah, I mean, I, I guess it, as I've said a few times, slightly less excited about the game currently. Um, and so I've been doing a bit worse of a job of making myself do it. I'm still here recording an episode, which I'm excited about, and still really enjoy doing all of that. That's the thing, is I enjoy creating content, but I'm excited to be excited about it again. I do think there has been an interesting, which is not part of the question, but I do think there has been an interesting shift in the community since we sort of got back into it. What are the challenges you are working on navigating as a content creator with a multitude of eyes/ears paying attention to you and your brother? I mean, that's, is certainly a thing, right? Like, when we started out, I was probably like, I could certainly come across as a bit of a dick, I think. Certainly much more so than Ben. And sort of just trying to navigate not sounding like an asshole, especially when we talk about, especially when we do our, like, battle report kind of stuff. You just don't want to be like, well, this person was an ass, or like they were dumb and did this, or I think that was like a long 10-inch chart. Like you want to report it and talk about it because that's part of what's fun, but you also don't want to basically shit on somebody who has no way of responding, right? Because like, you can send us a message and a comment and all of that stuff, like that's fine, and it's always good and nice to hear from people, especially if they feel misrepresented, and you can say the, like, mea culpas and apologize. But at the end of the day, like, I'm not going to re-record that section of the podcast, and unless it was something crazy, I'm not going to, like, make a big public statement. So, like, you don't want to misrepresent random person you played at an event, and, like, that's kind of tough. And I also think that there's some amount of responsibility that we have, which is where I'm trying to lean into, like, showing, like, look, you don't have to play this game purely as super competitive individuals. And I think that's the thing, is that the majority of the people creating content for this game is strictly in the, like, I want to win, I'm gonna win, I'm gonna play the best things, I'm gonna play well, and I'm gonna win. And I think that is, as I alluded to, or as I straight up said, the community has changed since we started playing, and I think there is more people pushing for more competitive play. And I think we have a responsibility as content creators, certainly ones who also aren't super competitive and winning all the tournaments, to be like, hey, look, you can go and have fun and do this fun thing this way. It's the reason I gave Ben so much shit for playing a super list at Nova last year, rather than being like, playing the paths of Druidan, which would have been way more fun. What are some areas you are working to improve upon in each of your content creation and gaming experiences? Well, one of the big areas, and what I've been currently looking at, and who knows, maybe I'll have even done it for this episode, is sort of upgrading and updating our video content, and just sort of, unfortunately, I have yet to solve the issue of our, like, background, like, random piece of art behind me, or whatever. But trying to move it into a more to look more professional, rather than like two dudes on a Zoom call. Not that we use Zoom to record, but to try and be more professional, look more professional in that kind of aspect, and just explore things that are fun. Like, we should hopefully be having some battle reports releasing sometime towards the end of next month. And I'm excited to share that stuff. But basically, just do the stuff that I get really excited about. Yeah, I'm also hopefully going to be creating and doing another podcast / YouTube channel just about general hobbying and stuff just as a whole, because, as I was saying, like, I feel like I have to be hyper focused on Lord of the Rings, but I also really enjoy creating content, so that's one of the things I love about doing it. But it would be cool. I'm excited about X other game. Like, I'm gonna have some content about that as well, because I like being in this space, and I think it's fun, and being creative. All right, so continuing to move on, this may be a long, rambling episode, so for that I apologize. With the new edition, will Shagrat ever be given another chance by Sam to cleanse his name? Probably not. No, I am actually interested in playing Minas, uh, whatever that army list is called. It's not Minas Morgul, that's the other one. Oof, oof. Kirathungal. There we go. Got it. That took a long time. Yeah, I'm excited about Kirathungal. I think now that he doesn't have that shield that's gonna that he potentially knocks people down, I might play him more as the like, well, he might kill one or two models rather than be like he's gonna go ham. I also that the likelihood of that will increase if there is a scenario where you pick up a bunch of stuff because his like give me that shiny shirt rule is awesome. So possible, but he's it's an uphill battle for old Shagrat. Let's put it that way. Somebody seconded the question about thoughts on competitive play. I've heard that the Ontario crew is struggling to sell tickets because of how unhappy people are with the new edition. Really surprised me as I've enjoyed it thus far. Yeah, I really enjoy the game. I love all of the changes they've made. There's still some stuff that like I'm just like, man, for an example, the like Temptation of Sauron from the Blackgate opens where you make somebody pass an intelligence test or you get to move them around. Really cool. However, once again, like Terra, it's just better if you're playing into evil because most of the good models have higher intelligence. So there's some of that kind of balanced stuff that I'm like, oh man, opportunity missed there. But otherwise, I think the game is really solid. I like all the changes they've made. I'm probably in the minority, but I like the change to the army lists. Yeah. So I'm excited to see what comes with that new book, but I don't understand the hatred. I really don't. So, finding if there are any more more questions. We had a bit of a discussion about that. Who wins in arm wrestling, Ben or Sam? Ooh, you know what? It's probably been years since we've arm wrestled. I would probably say myself, but that actually might not be true. Ben works construction, and I do IT. I do go to the gym, and I'm getting more into that. So, but I also probably have like at least 40 pounds on Ben, so I'll let you decide what you think. I'm gonna, as a confident man, I'm gonna root for myself and say that I will, but will we ever find out? Who's to say? Will we do a podcast about it if we do find out? Maybe. And then we've got some. So then we had somebody discuss they have a friend getting into the game and sent in this Minas Tirith army that they're going to be playing, which was Denethor, Irolas, and Faramir. It's a 650-point game, and had some beautifully painted models. And then basically played this game, and then was like, okay, I have this question. And the question was, after today's game, I feel like, after today's game, I feel like a good question for the podcast/community. How far do you go in playing soft against an opponent that might be new or something in order to make the game more enjoyable? And what are some tips you might have for somebody looking to do that? Here's the context. I played a game today with the aforementioned friend. He brought 650 points of Pits of Dol Guldur. We both decided to play to the death, to keep things simple. In the end, I sort of unintentionally ended up destroying him in the game. Honestly, I feel like it comes mostly down to Azza rolling poorly, but I still wanted to check to see if anyone had any pointers as to how you would navigate this situation. And then he says, for instance, here are some of the things I did. I was very clear about the options both of us had, reminding him on calling heroic actions or stuff like that, warning him that I would do X thing. For instance, I warned him that all of my heroes had heroic defense, so I'd probably call it if he charged them with Azog. And if he's trying to swiftly kill troops, he should probably avoid them. I allowed him to call marches out of order, so I had priority and had already moved, and then he realized he would fall short of where he wanted to be in order to charge next turn, so I allowed him to march even though he hadn't called it when he should have. I allowed him to re-roll for a banner that was out of range. He went for a re-roll on a fight when I had pointed out he had no banner. He mentioned it was within 6, obviously confused on the range, so I allowed him to have a 6-inch banner for the turn. And then I always err on the side, on his side in terms of in the ways. And then having said all that, I still mostly played to win. Turn he charged into my line, I managed to get Faramir and a couple of knights into a warg on the flank, and of course got a heroic combated off him. Or Azog was out of might and Faramir had a window to go in. I of course struck up and killed him off. I do feel like doing these things would have been not doing these things would have almost condescending. Yeah, an interesting one there. Yes, I certainly I wouldn't say play soft, but I certainly say I pull my punches if I'm playing somebody who's new to the game. And it depends, it depends. I think, right, so I generally, playing somebody new, will pull my punches. It does depend on your opponent. If your opponent is more likely to be excited about the game if they win, then yeah, helping them to the victory is probably good if you want them to continue to grow. And if you're trying to grow a community, you do not want to be the person who just, kicks the shit out of new people, right? That being said, it sounds like you did a bunch of great things. I think absolutely being clear on what everything can or can't do is a fantastic thing to do, and reminding them you're going to want to do a heroic strike here, or you want to do X, Y, or Z, or letting them that makes sense. You wanted to be here, you would have marched, and that kind of stuff. Now, you might have somebody who's just no, I play a bunch of other games, let's just play. Give me your thoughts as we go, but I'm pretty confident in my ability to play tabletop games, and so let's just go. I've read a bunch of my rules, and let's see if we can figure it out. Doesn't necessarily sound like that was the case with this guy. But, for example, you have a bunch of heroes who have heroic defense. I probably would let Azog kill at least one of them without calling a heroic defense, maybe you it's kind of rough because of the heroes. The list you have is a bit odd with, you don't want to throw away Denethor because he's the leader, and you don't really want to throw Faramir away either. And so for an example in that situation where you let him get a charge into Faramir, or you charge with Faramir into Azog, rather than calling the heroic defense, which is maybe the competitive thing or the better thing to do. You call the strike, he gets to call the strike, then it's an exciting 50-50 roll-off, and Azog gets to use his, I get to smack you and wound you on twos, and you lose a hero, but again, you're teaching somebody how to play, it doesn't really matter. Or you do, so it would be good to send Irolas in, but Irolas doesn't have strike, so maybe you make sure you call the moves with Irolas first, then throw Irolas in, or, you whatever it may be. So, I think heroic defense is just kind of one of those doesn't feel good rules. You're suddenly you're wounding on 6s. Also, this character that usually would wound on 3s against my heroes, it's still 6s. So yeah, there's that. I think I probably would have, I don't think giving him a 6-inch banner for the turn. I think you say, oh man, yeah, if there's a way where you can, where maybe his banner was further back and you can move it a little bit, physically move the model, you're for example, if it was 6 inches from Azog and he clearly could have or wanted to be in with the banner range, you move the banner so he's within Azog's range, that's fine. But I think extending the banner range, I think it's maybe not the best. The best is wrong. I probably wouldn't have done that because that is changing a fundamental rule. You're bummer, no man banner 6 inches, whatever it may be. The killing a warg on the flank and doing heroic combat totally makes sense. I think the thing that makes the difference there is did you then send Faramir in to like kill off a captain? That, like if you killed the Warg and then just spread out individually and killed like another couple of models each, like that's one thing. But if you're like, sweet, I get to heroic combat into one of your things, you were like into your banner, let's say, which sounds like you probably didn't, but like into the banner, now your banner's dead, like haha, that sucks, doesn't it? Like that is where that's the kind of stuff I wouldn't do, and that's how I I guess I'd pull my punches. And I think with teaching somebody new, you basically need to go in and like, you're like, okay, we're gonna solve this puzzle together. And also like, and to the death totally makes sense, nice simple one. But in some ways, throwing like some objectives down, like, but you focus on killing each other, like is how like I tend to play. Like most of the time, in any pickup game I play of Lord of the Rings, I don't bother working out the victory points at the end of the game. I have a general sense of how it goes, but like I never bother, because like I don't think it really matters. I think the thing that's more important is that you each had fun during the game, you learned some stuff, you got to show some cool stuff off. But if your friend's like, oh, can we do the calculating victory points, then you can go through and do it. But I very rarely am like, yeah, okay, and now we like the game's ended and now we tally it up. You can sort of do the like, oh man, I've only got like a handful of these guys left and you've got a bunch. Oh yeah, it's probably your, so that kind of thing. But yeah, I think it's a tough thing, and I really do think it depends on the person. Like for an example, I've just gotten back into a game I used to play a bunch, and having a good time playing it, which is War Machine, which is a very competitive mindset game and competitively like written, and I certainly did not. Nobody particularly. I mean, maybe somebody didn't go super hardcore into playing me, but it's definitely like oh no, like I'm not that worried about somebody pulling their punches or whatever with me, because I'm like, I play enough tabletop games, I've played this game before, that I get a sense of it. I'm fully aware that I'm gonna walk in and like get gotcha'd a bunch. Like I have an event coming up at some point, and I'm like, I expect to lose every single game because I just don't have the encyclopedic knowledge I do in this game like I do in Lord of the Rings. So, I think the biggest thing is it depends on the person's personality. I think with that very long answer to your question, hopefully that was interesting and or useful. I think that brings us to the end of all the questions that needed to be answered, and therefore the end of the episode. It's been a bit of a longer one than I thought it would be. I'm looking at my camera and realizing I'm kind of fuzzy, so whoops, sorry about that, and there's no slideshow to hide it, so this is probably an episode to listen to audio only. No, I hope this has been interesting and fun. We've managed to avoid some number of angry rants from me, but you got plenty of Sam, and we'll be back in a couple weeks with Ben's attendance of the Defense in the North tournament. If you want to hear more from us before then, you can certainly check out our Patreon. We have a bunch of half pints. I have 2 that I need to edit up and release, so there'll be one coming up in the next couple of days for sure. But yeah, that's really what helps us, enables us to do more of these podcasts. So please consider checking out our Patreon. Get yourself some sweet dice as well. Until next time, I'm gonna be hoarse tomorrow from talking so much. Just kidding, I speak way too much or way too often. But we will be back, or I will be back, in 2 short weeks. Thank you for listening to Gondor Calls for Ale. We hope you have enjoyed this episode. We, at Gondor Calls for Ale, are officially sponsored by the Baron of Dice, the producer of premium wargaming dice. These beautifully hand-swirled resin dice have no microbubbles and are therefore perfectly balanced. With over 3,000 variants and unique designs, nearly every tabletop gaming system is represented. So check out the description of this episode for a link and a discount code. Go buy yourself some new dice and let the good times roll. We at Gondor Calls for Ale are not associated with Games Workshop, New Line Cinema, or the Tolkien Estate. We hope we have not misrepresented or offended anyone. These recordings are strictly recollections of games we've played and are not commentaries on the character or competence of our opponents. They are intended purely for entertainment, and we hope they will be taken as such. You can find us on Patreon, see the link in the description. Supporting Gondor Calls for Ale there helps us continue to produce these episodes. You can find us on Instagram at Gondor_calls_for_ale. Feel free to send us a message there. Or on Facebook as Gondor Calls for Ale, another great place to send us a message. Or you can send us an email at gondorcallsforale@gmail.com. As Boromir, Captain of the White Tower, once said, remember today, listener, today this episode was good.